I'm Frank Pishker. I'm chair of the Department of Art and Design here at Missouri Southern. I'm really excited to be able to introduce our next visiting artist. One of the challenges we have with putting on a themed semester each year is coming up with a gallery exhibition of a contemporary artist from that country or region, because with limited resources, it's tough to fly somebody over from another country, ship their work in, deal with customs and all those sorts of entanglements that it would be. So we're really thrilled to be able to find a Japanese national actually close enough where we could bring their work in, as well as, thanks to modern technology, do a actual live talk with our audience. So I'm very thrilled to be able to introduce Hironobu Nishitateno. Nishitateno. Goes by Nishi. Started out, like many people, getting an economics degree. And then going, this might not be everything that's in the world for me. Sought out a Japanese artist and started an apprenticeship. And that's pretty common still in Asia for learning a wide range of art forms. Is you start out working under a master, slowly you get to do more involved tasks, and it's very much like a college education, just more in a one-on-one direct sort of manner. We do this to a limited degree in the United States as well, especially in ceramics, but also a few other art forms. So it's really a pleasure to be able to bring him in to not only talk about Japanese pottery, but also the way he learned this pottery and how it ties in with what's happening in the United States, as well as what's happening in Japan. And it's been really exciting to see some correlations between his work and what we're doing here at Southern. I had my classes in the gallery last night. We were talking about how similar the glaze types are to the very ones that we tend to use at our university. So again, that synergy of stuff that's got invented, developed thousands of years ago, and how that's still contemporarily being used as a living tradition. So with no further ado, I'd like to let our guests take over. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us. Yep, this is Hironobu Nishitateno, and like Frank said, we all call him Nishi, and I'm Liz. I'm his wife, Elizabeth, and I'm going to be doing the
better English.
I'm going to do the explaining just because, yeah, I speak better English than he does. But yeah, just an introduction to his work to begin with, and I'll just do it quickly. But Nishi tries to make simple shapes. He uses very simple textures and ideas from nature. I've got a few quick examples here. This is just a very simple vase. And as you can see, the little flower at the top, his idea for this was a blueberry or a pomegranate. So there's a little bit of nature worked in. Let's see, he uses various textures so that it's a nice tactile feel for the user, as well as adding to the appearance of the food when you put food inside it. Let's see. Here's another, it's similar. You can see the lines, the carved lines there, and that also adds to the experience of using the piece while still keeping it simple. And the last example I have, this plate is a very simple plate, but you can probably see the carved lines here, and that changes the way the glaze breaks across the lines, and it adds a simple interest. It's not too much to take away from the food that you put on the plate, but it adds a subtle interest and makes the food look tastier and nicer. So that's the idea: simplicity, nature, tactile, using all of the senses for his work. And of course, also, as Frank said, the glazing is very simple. Usually one glaze, He also likes to use one glaze to create many different colors. If you can see here, this is one glaze, but you can see a dark brown, you can see a lighter greenish brown, and in the center where the glaze pools, it's greenish. And so it's just kind of showcasing all of the potential of the glaze. There was one other thing that I wanted to mention. In Japan, generally, imperfection is a good thing. We know that all people are imperfect. Everything in life pretty much is imperfect. And so Nishi likes to add that to his work. He'll make, instead of a perfect round shape, he'll make it a little bit off on purpose. And that's to help make the piece more approachable and easier to use for the person. Sometimes it can be scary to be with someone who seems perfect, or to use something that is so perfect you don't want to hurt it, you don't want to drop it, you don't want to do anything wrong. And so his pieces are very approachable because of the little purposely imperfect part of it. So with that, Nishi wants to show you some of his stamped work, and specifically the Mishima technique. Now the Mishima technique is a little less simple. It's a little bit of fun for Nishi to be able to make pieces with this technique. So you can see here, right in the center, he's got many stamps, and he's covered over the stamps with a slip, which I'll explain later, and then he scrapes it off and can eventually fire the piece. This is an old technique. It's originally from South Korea. Yeah, you can get started, sure. It's from South Korea, and it came over to Japan in the late 1500s, so right before the Edo period. Like I said, it's stamp work, and then we put slip in it, and it becomes an inlay. Okay, let's see here. So the South Korean Mishima technique might be a little bit different from the Japanese, because the way the Japanese cultivate their art is they'll either make it themselves, or they'll borrow a technique from another country, and they'll take the basics of it, and then they will build into it their own culture. So cultural forms, nature, natural images, that kind of thing. And so over the last 400 years, that's what Japan has done with this technique. So to what Nishi's doing here, he is right now creating.
This time I used the balloon flower stamps for the, fall.
For the fall.
This is a season stamp,
So he makes all of his stamps out of clay. Of course, if you drop it, you break it and you have to remake it, but clay is a really great medium to make the stamps out of, and very easy to form the picture that you want. So he's made all of his stamps, and sorry, that is a walnut tree above our studio. So we often hear that, the nuts falling on the roof. There you go. Bring it up closer. So you can see he's pressing the balloon flower stamps into the clay. And the stamps that he makes are usually nature-based. Sometimes they're fun patterns that he likes. We'll see if you can see these, but you can see, let's see, that's a cherry blossom. And this one here, you might have seen it on a taiko drum. I'm not sure if you can see that. I don't know if it's big enough, but it's the thunder clouds. Let's see, he's made some for snowflakes. He's made some with a leaf type of design. Even this one he created out of skewer rods, and he stuck them together, and this is a sun. So really you can use any, sorry, You can use any medium to make your stamps, but he chooses generally to use clay. So he presses his stamps into the clay and he tries to make the image very sharp, because if it's not a sharp impression when he does the next few steps, it won't come out very sharp. The lines will be a little bit wobbly. So when he's done putting all of the impressions in there, he's going to move on to painting the entire piece with a slip. And what is a slip? Some people use just 100% clay and water for their slip. Some people use 100% kaolin for their slip. The way he does it, he wants it a little bit glassier, a little bit more like a glaze. So he mixes his clay, clay with kaolin, feldspar, silica, and whiting with water, and makes it a real loose liquid. So you can see that. Yeah, you should be able to see that a little bit. Okay. So then he's going to paint into all of the impressions to fill them in. So this is the inlay process. And of course, it sinks down into the impression. So he has to apply usually 2 coats. He'll let it dry a little bit in between. And also some people will use colored slip, so they can use a stain in the slip so that the impressions turn out a certain color. Usually the traditional way in Japan is to use white slip, and that's generally what Nishi does. It looks pretty unexciting right now, but he'll let that dry. Do you want to do one more?
Yeah.
Sure. He's going to do one more.
Step.
Oh, that's true.
Thunder?
This is a little dirty, but it's another Mishima plate. And you can see that design. That design is a thunder design. And that you see on the taiko drums as well. So he's going to stamp one more plate or platter and fill that in with slip. And then we'll move on to the next step. He's just putting clay underneath and kind of sticking it down so that the platter doesn't move when he's placing the stamps. And depending on the look that he's going for, he'll draw lines with charcoal ink. And that will burn off when the piece is bisque fired. So it's not a worry that there's a color on there. I'll show you this one. This is one where you can see the lines. This is where he did the same thing. He drew lines with his charcoal ink, and then he stamped inside it. It's nice guidelines, as well as kind of breaking up the picture a little bit. And here he's just making marks so that he can properly place his design. He's got a certain design in mind, and he knows that it needs 6 quadrants. And when he presses the stamps, this clay is leather hard, so it's not super easy to press the stamps in. And so either he has to hold the back where the stamp is going in, or he has to make sure that it's on a wheel or on a surface so that he doesn't push through or he doesn't make a little bump on the bottom. So it's going to be a little bit difficult to see the pattern now because he has the charcoal ink there, but he's putting his stamps right on the marks that he drew earlier. See there.
The point is just not just push, just like this. You know, step, rolling.
Right, rotate it around so that all sides show up. And now that he's put his little stamps on each of those, they're not necessarily corners, but each of the marks, he can properly space the next stamps that are right in between. Now, some people, when they do this technique, they will not let the clay dry to leather hard. They will do it a bit earlier so that the clay is softer. That is because when you put the slip on, the slip is very, very wet. And the dryness of the piece at leather hard makes them not dry together very easily, and you can get cracking that way. So people stamping and adding the slip earlier are trying to avoid the cracking. Nishi prefers it this way, and he just makes sure to dry the piece very, very slowly once he's done. And when applying the slip, he has to make sure that all the air bubbles come out. That's what he's doing there. He's just making sure that he knocks them down and lets the air out.
Yes.
Sure. Which one do you want?
This one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. He wants to do one more.
One more. This time it's what's that? Big Dipper.
Right. So he has, it looks like a bunch of dots here, but this is in the shape of the Big Dipper. And so he's going to use his little guide here, and he's going to use his pen, another random tool. You can use anything in clay. He's making the dots for the stars with the pen or the skewer. So that becomes his guide. And again, he's using the skewer to connect the dots. Now you can go to a regular store and buy a bunch of tools, but you don't have to, you know, in pottery. You can use really anything that works. For example, when Nishi is forming the curve in his bowls, he'll use a CD to get this curve. Let's see, other ideas. One of his tools that you'll see in a minute, this tool he made, and right here, this is a bandsaw blade. He also uses, to wipe off his pieces, he'll use blush brushes. Let's do that right down. He'll use ketchup bottles to squeeze spikes onto his pots. Yeah. Oh, and he wants to dry this quickly, so he's going to use It's like a hair dryer. Oh, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work.
Okay.
So here's what we've got so far. Big Dipper. And he'll start the inlaying. So again, he has his tribute to the stars in this piece.
Great. Okay, so now it's
Wanna
fun
shave?
time. Yeah,
Fun time.
I'll start the carving.
So he uses the tool that he made from the bandsaw blade, and he just gently scrapes over the impressions. And of course, because they're impressions, the white slip stays inside the impression, and he is taking it off he's taking off the excess around it. And here too, obviously different artists are going to do it in a different way. Some artists will clean it perfectly. They will get all of the excess off. Nishi generally likes the quote unquote imperfection of having a little bit left on there. I'll show you on this bowl if you can see it. You can see he's left a little bit of white here, a little bit of white there. And that's just a little bit of purposeful imperfection again. And different artists will use different tools for this carving, shaving process. Nishi likes to use this tool. Some people will use a sponge. Some people will use, where did that rib go? There it is. They'll use a metal rib. Really anything. This just works best for him. And since a lot of his stamps have a center to them, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see this, but we'll try. You can see a little center in there. He needs to make sure that when he's shaving it off, he also has to make sure that the center is shaved off. You got to be able to see the whole stamp. And through testing, trial and error, he's learned how much of the white slip he can leave on there to get what type of look. So probably when he's done shaving this off, we'll be surprised that there's so much of the white slip still on there. But when he fires it, a lot of that will disappear. Here are a couple more examples. There's one that he made with one of our daughters.
I stop like this, and after dry, I'll use this sponge, and I think more it will be more clear.
Take a little more of the white off.
Yeah.
So when he's finished with this, he will let the pieces dry very slowly, like we said, and that's usually like putting a garbage bag, a plastic bag around the piece, you know, to keep the regular atmosphere out and keep the moisture in, so that it's very, very slow for the drying, and that will minimize the cracking. And after that, when the piece is totally dry, he'll be able to bisque fire it. That is the first firing that keeps the clay still a little bit porous, but it hardens it. And the porousness of the piece then allows the glaze to be soaked in. So he'll do a bisque firing, and then he'll glaze it usually in a clear glaze. And he'll fire it for the finished look. Yeah, yep. Thunder. Oh, okay, yeah, it's the same look, isn't it? And also, depending on the clay, you'll get a different look. So just like, whoa, you can see that these clays are different clays, right? One is redder and one is grayer. I think this is the last one he's gonna shave off. This piece is, let's see. For this one, this is the design that he put on there. There are two circles, one's bigger than the other, but they are touching. And the tools that he used for making those impressions are a simple plastic cup and a pipe. So really anything works as a tool. And what he was thinking for this, he's thinking about relationships and how we all, when we interact, we touch one another, whether it's, you know, energetically or, you know, physically. And so the circles touching, it just reminds you of the relationships that we all have. He also likes that it's kind of an infinity look. The Japanese have so much symbolism. It's very, very important to them. Wanted to do another one. So this one is it's a small version of the Big Dipper plate, and he wasn't able to do this on this piece because it's not quite dry and he wasn't able to shave off the slip yet. But now on this piece that he was able to shave off the slip, he is, I forgot the word. He's scratching, he's marking underneath where he's going to add a little bit of a stain. Scoring, that's the word. He's scoring underneath. And the scoring, it's another imperfection. It helps the clay to clay connection. If you don't score often, these will pop off later on in the process. So he's using a yellow stain and he's putting it on. Can I show them or will it drip? Yeah, it'll drip.
Let's wait.
Okay, we'll wait.
I will do the hakeme, both sides.
On this one or a different one? This one?
No, both sides. Both one
Okay.
will be this.
Okay, so hakeme is a technique it's a brush stroke technique. And so Nishi uses all sorts of brushes. I'll get the. Just a second. I'm gonna- All right, it should work. Try to see. So this is the hair dryer like dryer
Yes,
that
now.
that he uses. Yeah, so a little bit closer. Okay, so you can see the stars then in the pattern. And so the hakeme technique is, it's really just brushwork. And so he'll use different brushes and he'll put slip on the
Usually-
brushes.
Usually Japanese use the straw, rice straw, but I use the pine needle. It's very useful.
So rice straw or pine needles. Yeah, he actually just collected these from a pine tree in the yard and take them all together. And he likes to use that usually. At the moment, though, he's using a blush brush. And here comes the pine needles. And the pine needles add the marks with a little bit of space in between. And here too, just like with the shaving of the slip, depending on, one sec. He knows the thickness of the slip that he has to put on in order for the color to show up nicely once it's fired. So that'll be similar to this one. This one also has the hakeme or the brush stroke around the outsides. And he did that on the back as well, on the sides.
You have that?
It's, well, it's been about 37 minutes, so it's up to you if you want to do
Yeah.
one more short thing.
Yeah. I make stamp. And I use usually I use a clay for stamp.
Just to give you an idea of how he makes his stamps. He starts making a snake. And with clay, you can make it as well, any shape you want. So you can make it ergonomically correct for your hands. And he often makes stamps on both ends of the clay piece. So sometimes he'll make one end bigger and one end smaller so that he has the two different sizes of the same stamp or different stamps.
This clay stamp point is it's not only flat. If I make little around surface. Document it.
So very simple, very quick. And then he gets to carve.
And this is already dry.
So he waited for it to get leather hard or so. And here he's using a razor blade as one of his tools. The stamps have to be fairly deep. He will often look through the library books that the kids and I bring home, and he's just looking for designs that spark his interest or inspire him. So you'll see on his phone, he's got lots of pictures of children's books and you know, maybe quilt patterns or just anywhere that he sees an interesting pattern. And he usually doesn't use that exact pattern, but it inspires something in him, gives him an idea for something like it, but not the same. So here he's got an X-Acto knife. Show them your progress. So here it is so far. And we're not allowed to throw away pens in our house because Nishi always keeps them. He uses them as tools, pens and pencils. Okay, so he's stopping there, and now with the stamp carved, he needs to let this dry so that it gets hard enough to actually use. He usually bisque fires his stamps so that they're nice and hard and they won't lose their shape. Last one. This tool is a broken ruler. It is pretty funny, isn't it? Almost done.
It's a kind of a ninja shuriken, ninja weapon.
The ninja shooting star, that kind of shape is what he's making. Okay, so we'll leave it at that, and if anyone has questions, we'll take them now.
I've got a question. With coming to the United States and working with probably some traditional glazes, how much trouble did you have finding glazed materials that would sync up with what you expected the materials to do?
I learned the basic material ingredients like silica, how many percent, aluminum, you know. I think quite similar, you know, the Japan and US, you know, all material. But yeah, first 1 year, I learned a lot, you know, which areas silica is good for me, and you know, and feldspar. I check what's that, the graph all graph, so it takes time, but much well, yeah, my grades.
It definitely was not easy. That first year was very tough. And I remember him saying the bone ash here is not the same as the bone ash there. And in Japan, they use rice hull ash, whereas you can't really get that here. So there were a few blips, but with lots of firing and trial and error, he was able to create those.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I expected, because I've certainly looked at some Japanese recipes and it's like, whoa, I don't know how we're going to get that.
Right.
It's not quite the same.
Yeah.
Right.
Anybody have any questions about the stamping technique, using the slips, why he would use such a technique, anything along those lines? Oh, are there some questions on the Zoom? Can you guys access those at all, or do we need to try to read them out?
I wonder if they would be in the chat.
Yeah, probably. Chat or the Q&A.
I don't see any in the chat.
Let's see, maybe one in the Q&A.
One. Did you have a theme? A theme for the pieces? People do sometimes say, what is the theme of your work in general? And for Nishi, it's always the simplicity, the functionality, the nature, the traditional feel. And he always wants everything to feel good in the hand, whether it's a bowl or a mug handle. So really, that relationship between the pot and the user is very important to him, right?
Yeah.
And simplicity brings a little bit of peace and calm in our chaotic lives these days.
Connection, I think.
Right. One interesting thing, people will say, hey, what is this picture? And, some artists will say, well, it's this and this and this. Well, Nishi says, well, what do you feel like it is? Because the relationship it's not between him and the pot, and you have to understand that relationship. It's between him and the pot and you and your interpretation. So he wants you to imagine whatever the pot makes you think of or whatever it makes you feel and create that relationship. And that's what brings you closer to the piece and closer to nature and other people as well.
Excellent. And I would like to commend you guys on we got the titles for the shows, but then the extra paragraph sort of explaining the work was very enriching. I was very thrilled to get that additional information for,
thank you.
Above and beyond the typical artist statement, but to actually have that sort of lower level information with each grouping of pieces was very instrumental and very helpful, I think, for a lot of the viewers.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions? Otherwise, maybe a round of applause. All right, thank you.
Fireworks at the end.